And remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, Pastor Tony Pierce from the First Baptist Church, please.
I'm not Pastor Tony, but I send my greetings from him. I'm the youth pastor there at the church.
Thank you.
I just got back from a 2-week trip to Africa. I've been in 7 different countries in the past 2 weeks, and I can tell you there is no place like being home. And there's no place like Fountain Hills, so I'm glad to be here with you. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for loving the people of Africa. Thank you for loving the people of Fountain Hills. Thank you for everything that you do to sustain us and to care for us. We ask for wisdom. We ask for direction. We ask for a spirit of love. And like they say in Zambia, Atu Yandanye, let us love one another. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Tolas,
Here.
Councilmember Charno,
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Magazine,
Here.
Councilmember Lacrone, Councilmember Spellich.
Here.
Thank you. The first item is a proclamation declaring February 2019 as Go Red for Women Month in the town of Fountain Hills. I believe Dr. Zenhausen from Wellness of Scottsdale may be here. Yes, great. I'll come down. I'll read it from up here and then I'll come down. Thank you. Whereas in the United States, heart disease is the #1 killer of women, causing 1 in 3 deaths each year, approximately 1 woman every 80 seconds. And whereas in Arizona, on average, nearly 16 women die every day from heart disease or stroke. And whereas women have a higher lifetime risk of stroke than men, with different heart attack symptoms that are often misunderstood. And whereas an increase in community awareness is necessary to encourage everyone to go red, because 80% of cardiac events can be prevented with education and lifestyle changes. Now, therefore, I, Jenny Dickey, Mayor of Fountain Hills, do hereby proclaim February 2019 as Go Red for Women Month and encourage Fountain Hills residents to be part of the American Heart Association's national movement to end heart disease and stroke in women, because it's not just a men's disease. Citizens are encouraged to make a change for better health with physical activity, healthy eating, lowering their blood pressure, and teaching children the importance of staying active and making healthy food choices. People can show their alignment to the cause by registering at goredforwomen.org. Therefore, in witness, I have set my hand and caused to be affixed to the official seal of the town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, this 5th day of February 2019. Now I'll make the presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Alicia Zenhauser, and I'm a naturopathic doctor. So my goal is to help with prevention. So here our goal is really to help spread awareness to Fountain Hills about Go Red for Women and helping with heart disease and prevention. So we're really happy to see that you guys are part of this big movement. We offer programs for kids. We offer the Heart Association Museum that a lot of children, even when I was in school in Fountain Hills, we went to help teach kids about smoking and how to pick diets and how to grocery shop and everything like that. So we really appreciate your involvement. So thank you again.
Thank you. I'll hand this to you so we can get a picture and Thanks, everyone. Next, we have a special appearance by our Strategic Planning Advisory Commission. Grady, do you have anything, or?
Yes, Mayor and Council, before you tonight is Dana Sarr. He's the current chair of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission. And they recently went through a reprioritization of the council-approved 2017 strategic plan. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Sarr, who will go through that with you. In fact, at the dais where you're sitting, you'll see some sheets in front of you. And he's going to explain this through you. But we've got the what I call the operationalized strategic plan here, which you open it up and it has tables. And then it's been color-coded to reflect the prioritizations. And then this is kind of the exercise that they went through to help do that. And then they kind of did a sort. And then if you just look at the strategic plan, this is the executive summary of it that has like a one-page view of it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair, who will go through the process and why they thought that this would be helpful for the council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Mr. Miller, and thank you for having us here again. This is an update on something we put together a few years ago as our town's strategic plan, and I want to make sure that you understand that the amount of work that's been done since then has been substantial. We've gone through this group of tasks and reprioritized them based on what we've learned since the original document was approved by the council. Obviously, the big development in between those was the defeat of the property tax, which would have given some of these a better chance of being done. But we are what we are, so we looked at these and decided that based on what we've heard from the community, we want to make sure that this is still a viable document. As Grady said, it's divided up into 3 different groups. We kind of prioritize them top to bottom. The yellow is on top, the top 6 priorities. If you notice some trends in each of those groupings, the top one says, in order to accomplish a lot of what we have in our strategic plan, we need the revenue to do so. Since we don't have the ability at this time to get that from taxpayers, we're looking at seeing where else we have sources of revenue that we can draw on to meet the obligations that the town has financially. So number 1 is to increase the revenues, obviously. Number 2 is to identify those additional revenue options. And then we get down into some more specifics, which is develop and implement an investment plan to bring streets, buildings, and parks up to established standards. That's the big elephant in the room for us. We know that our infrastructure has been borrowed against for many years, and it continues to require more maintenance than we're able to provide for it. Next one is adequately fund all identified reserve funds. That's been something that the town has tried to do for a long time, but we keep drawing from those to take care of emergency funds. We know that that is life, that we have activities and things that happen that were not expected, that these reserve funds are proposed to take care of. We also want to work with the state land trust to increase residential density. That's been discussed for a long time. In discussions of the town that we've heard, that's still something that we feel will bring in additional revenue with more tax-paying residents. And finally, in that top, we've got to rezone the unplatted land for greater density and affordable family homes. Again, we want to make sure you don't understand that affordable family homes does not mean subsidized housing. It is simply affordable family homes as opposed to the more second and third tier homes that most of our families in town have. The next grouping is things that we in this town, along with, by the way, our Strategic Planning Commission, we also rely on input coming from our town's group from the community center, community association, that are still out there asking from our residents what they're looking for. And before I go too much further, I know that a lot of our commission members are in the audience, and I'd like them to stand so you know who they are. That blue area is exploring higher education opportunities, include family branding and a marketing plan, expand the use of social media and online messaging, develop a community brand, vision, or marketing plan, utilize effective volunteer skills and talents, include local school strength in the marketing plan, develop and adopt a comprehensive environmental plan, and rezone undeveloped commercial property to residential where it is feasible. Those are all things that are underway. I think Grady has given you a status report as to where a lot of these are. And we follow that every month that we meet to make sure that what the town staff was given as a charge by you is being followed. That's one of our charges in our charter, is to monitor what has been done. I know some of you go back a long way with this commission, Mr. Magazine, but we've gone a long way since you and I were on that commission. Right. And I could go on and spend the rest of the evening, but I know that everybody wants to get home and watch the president's speech, so I'll just open it up for questions.
Thank you. I wanted to mention that the items, the documents that were mentioned earlier were in the packet and online for everybody to see, just so you know. We do have a request to speak on this item, and then I'd like to ask council if they have any questions. So why don't we go with council first, and then we'll go to the request to speak, if that's okay. Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Dana, thank you very much, and Commission, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. I know how hard you work on a regular basis to come up with this, but 401C, the increased revenues, and 401B, identify revenue options. Have you got any recommendations for us? Have you run across anything that might help us?
Well, it's not an excuse, but it's not in our scope, actually. But we've talked about that, obviously, and others have as well. Vision Fountain Hills is certainly looking at all those options. If you notice, we go back to the days, I do, 40 years ago, when a lot of the needs of this town were handled by growth, with a major developer handling a lot of what we had to accomplish as a town. Well, those days are over, and now it's up to us to take on those expenses. So looking at everything from not only revenue, but how we can adjust our expenses to meet our current revenue has been what we've talked about. As far as what other identified options, getting more people to pay taxes as opposed to asking our current people to pay more taxes is kind of our thought. So we, I can't say we've come up with the solution. That would be ridiculous, but quite frankly, that's a community job to do.
Well, I know you've got some awfully good minds on the commission, and that's why I was directing that question to you. And thank you again for what you do.
Councilman Magazine.
Dana, I want to echo Councilman Brown's comments. Thank you, and thank the commissioners, because I know firsthand it's a lot of work. So we really appreciate it. I have 2 or 3 questions. Well, first a comment. 401A, adequately fund all identified reserve funds. I think we're all aware of the fact that we've got a real problem. Those reserve funds are being depleted. Things happen. Golden Eagle Park, $600,000, $700,000 all of a sudden. And so I'm glad you identified that, but of course we can't do anything about that until we solve 401C, which is basically raising revenue. 12C says rezone unplatted land for greater density and affordable family homes. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, the unplatted land includes mostly the 2 sections north of town and the 3 parcels that the school district owns. The school district's properties have all been zoned. The 2 sections north of town have a general plan assignment to it. And it's a very expensive parcel of land to develop. The 3 parcels that the school district owns are typical of what we have here in Fountain Hills for terrain. The flattest parcel is up on the northwest part of town. It's currently zoned very not dense, I should say. We could look at that and make it a more dense zoning, similar to the surrounding lots or R110, which would give us a chance to develop a project in there that would be more family-friendly. The other two parcels are your typical hillside development areas. They could also be potentially adjusted to meet better for affordable homes. The two sections north of town are a challenge. The terrain is hilly. It's difficult under our current subdivision ordinance with 10-foot fill and 10-foot cut to make those affordable lots in the end. So we have to do in our mind what we can at the edges and in the middle to develop a chance to bring families in here who actually spend more money than people like me. I probably got all the socks I need for the rest of my life. But those families spend predominantly more money per capita than people our age. So that's our input for trying to develop that younger ability to afford homes here in Fountain Hills.
Related to that, 31A says, work with state land trust to increase residential density. There is no density right now.
No.
So what did you have in mind there?
Well, we're in the process of updating our general plan, and that currently has a designation that possibly could be changed to higher density. Obviously, again, as I mentioned, the terrain makes it difficult. We can't necessarily flatten it out. That's probably not going to work for a number of reasons. But we have to do, in my mind, everything we can to make that property out there more conducive to those younger families. It's close to the middle school. The middle school is part of that. We hope that in the process of developing that land that the school district actually gets ownership of that school. So it's really a matter of taking all the resources we have in the town and squeezing the most value out of those we can for the ability to cover our costs and our obligations as a town.
I for sure would like to see more young families, and I think we should zone for that. But I have to say that I don't think density for density's sake is necessarily good. It creates other kinds of problems for the town. You have traffic problems, you have cost of roadways, and so on and so forth. And so I think we just should be quite careful when we say increased density, so that we see what the total impact would be on the community. I want to ask you a question about 32C, include family branding and marketing plan. I'm sorry, wrong one. Develop a community brand / vision - marketing plan. I may be wrong, but I thought we had done that.
Yeah, if you look at Grady's progress report, many of those are accomplished. And we give credit to staff for working on those. They've got a plan to get them all done that they can under their capabilities. So kudos to staff for working on this for the last year.
Thank you.
Councilman Charno?
Yeah, thank you. Dean, I'm just wondering, this executive summary 2017, so you're updating it. I mean, are we going to have a 2019 or a 2020 summary? Is that kind of the plan, or?
Well, it was a total redo every 5 years according to our charter. And the last one took about 7 years to finally get it to the council for approval. We had that discussion, and I'm going to defer to Grady to give you the most advanced news.
Yes, so we did discuss that per the charter for the group, the mission is to do this about every 5 years and do a complete redo. But what the goal is here is that they're wanting to annually do a refresh and update, and so that's what they're trying to do. In fact, when you have your retreat this Thursday, one of the first items is to review this and actually review their reprioritization and to either confirm or have you provide input as to what you think are the priorities, and then they'll go back and we'll probably finalize that plan and bring it back to you in a future date. So that's the plan, and then until we reach the 2020, because when the council passed that in 17, It really should have been the 2015 plan. So we think we've got probably between now and next year, and then we'll start trying to get the 2020 plan completed in time for the end of 2020. So I hope I answered the question.
And I know it's obviously your main mission and part of your name, and obviously there's a lot of different moving parts here, but is there anything else kind of out of the box that you're working on, or are you kind of just focused on this stuff, or are you open to assignments, or how does that work in terms of?
Well, by charter, we work at the hest of the council, so we would be open to that, but it has to come from outside of our purview. So we look forward to any activity or any new challenge you'd like to throw in front of us. We're good people. We love talking to each other, and we're looking for some more.
And if I may, I did forget one key point that Dana and I wanted to make sure the council was aware of. So you probably recall back in 2016, there was a visioning process that really helped influence the current plan. And my understanding is that there's going to be a similar visioning process happening this year, which will help influence the development of the 2020 plan. So I anticipate, if it's very similar to what it was 3 years ago, there will be community survey where residents in the community, everyone will have an opportunity to weigh in and provide input. And then there's going to be basically a day where members of the community will be invited to the community center to actually do some group exercises and actually identify the top priorities in the community. And those will then kind of get filtered back down through to SPAC. And SPAC, Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, will then utilize that to create the next big plan update.
Drawing from the community is an ongoing process. Those people that were here 40 years ago are not all here now, and those that have moved in the last 10 years, this is new to them. So we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of all citizens, whether they came yesterday or came a long, long time ago. So the Strategic Planning Commission relies on like Vision Fountain Hills and other organizations in town to give us the feedback we need to keep this document current and to make it relevant for the needs of our town.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Great job with all you do. Your committee's working hard year after year, and I feel we hear a lot of the same issues year after year. A few of them that I think are really important, and I know we'll talk more about it on Thursday at our retreat. But something that I've been passionate about ever since I moved here, and having 6 children go through the school district, is our school system, and how important it is to have a balance in this community and have a successful, strong school district. You identified a number of your 5.1B, 5.1C, 1.2C, which would directly be related to the growth of our community and having the higher density and, as you indicate, more affordable housing. I think what the tie-in there is that you understand that this school district needs to be successful. I'm more and more inclined to feel that we are reaching for something that just may not actually be possible. And it's sad to say that, but I just feel that your number one, 4.1C, as to how we increase revenues, should the focus, and this is a question that I'd like to have your perspective, but if our town right now in our revenue sources is predominantly generated by sales tax revenues, shouldn't we be doing all we can to drive those sales tax revenues? And would you agree that tourism and bringing people to our community to spend their money would be the most logical, fastest way that we can accomplish that increase in revenue, rather than thinking that by rezoning and then having to find a developer and then having to find the time frame, the span of this, I just don't think it's realistic. We're not going to catch up fast enough.
Well, there's certainly a short-term and long-term. The plan is both, and you're right. Although I'm a math guy, when you put math to this, the change in revenue for sales tax requires an enormous change in how this town spends their money. If we had more people spending money, it would certainly add to the sales tax revenue, and that's where we come back with some of those longer-term things. But in the short term, if everybody in town spent every dollar they spend in town, we would do much better. But that's not our ability to tell people where to spend their money. We can promote that as much as we can. We can promote people from out of town coming here and spending their money, but it takes us back to the days when we relied on basically MCO to cover a lot of our costs. We can't rely on third-party people to meet the needs of our town. We have to take that responsibility on ourselves. Not to say that we can't do some things that improve our revenue sources from sales tax, but it's, in my mind, and you asked me, so I'm going to give you my opinion, it's really ticking around the edges. You really need to get to the core of our needs and our abilities to raise revenue to solve these massive issues that we have in front of us. And as I said, this is both a short-term and a long-term plan. We need to make sure that we've got both things going. This town will be here long after all of us are gone, but these plans today are going to affect what those people 30, 40, 50 years from now have as a community.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. So with that being said, 5.1B, work with the Fountain Hills Unified School District to maximize property values. Are you addressing property values of residential homes in this community's values and making sure that they understand the tie-in between a successful school district and a failing school district? Not to say either is happening right now, but...
Absolutely, Mr. Tolis, that is what we were thinking of all along on that item. It also, in a minor way, affects the 3 parcels that the school district owns. But way more important than that is the fact that any school district is always a factor in where people locate. We've got a great school system here in Fountain Hills, and we need to make sure that people know that. We have a lot of competition in close proximity to Fountain Hills, and the choices are good. Our residents can go to, what's labeled as the best high school in the country, less than 2 miles outside the district. So those are good reasons for moving to Fountain Hills.
And if planning and zoning was to work on the parcels that the school district owns and to try to increase density for highest and best use with the objective that we're trying to help to provide family housing in town without having any fair lending law regulations. We had a meeting with the Unified School District Board, and they were adamantly against moving forward with putting it to a vote, which is the first step to sell that land. And then ultimately, once it was approved by the voters to sell the land, then marketing that land. How do you begin to get that conversation to go a little bit maybe in a direction that they'd be willing to do that?
Well, I wouldn't give up on the school board. I think they serve the same constituency that you do for the most part. And I think the more that the two of you get on the same page in a lot of these issues, that those kind of challenges will be behind us. Timing is everything. The mayor and I served on that school board for a long time. That came up numerous times while I was on the board for 15 or 14 years. But the timing is important. And whether you're going to do it at the high market price or whether you're going to do it to meet the needs of the community outside just the school district's responsibilities is up to the combination of all the government entities in the town's boundaries.
Thank you. Last comment and request. I know you've been very involved in the school district, and I think it's a critical component to our success of our town long-term. And I also feel that state trust land, if it's ever developed, and you have a developer that's going to come in and is going to build on that, that's going to have higher density, the sales pitch is going to be the school district and what this community provides as a family-friendly community. Do you know the enrollment numbers right now for kindergarten, first grade classes? If you do, I'd love for you to share that now. If you don't, can you get that information to our council before the retreat on Thursday?
I'm sure I still have some cloud over there, so we'll see if that's possible, but I will do that, yes.
One thing just about that, the general plan that we're doing now, Vice Mayor has some of those statistics in them, so I think I could get that to you, so you don't have to do that. Councilman Magazine? Oh, okay. So I'm just going to reiterate, we're going to talk about this at the retreat. I think one of the things I'd like to talk about a little bit is the connection between Vision Fountain Hills and SPAC. I think a lot of people wonder what the difference is, and then also how the general plan is going to kind of fold into all of this. It's a lot of planning and a lot of input that we're going to be getting in the next year or so. But I guess the way I look at it is Vision Fountain Hills sort of implements, you like you were saying, you have the ideas, you have the strategic plan. I appreciate in the fact that I was able to listen to some of your meetings, the fact that a lot of the things we talk about, whether it's rezoning or attracting people to come here, becomes reliant on our ability as a town to have staff that can do that, or to even have the staff who can engage the volunteers to do it. So these things are all intertwined with what is appropriately in yellow here. So I really want to thank you for that, and I look forward to talking to you more about all this at the retreat. And if it's okay with you, we'll let our request to speak come up, and then if there's anything to follow up on that, then we'll do that. Thank you, Dana. Thank you,
Mayor.
committee.
Bob Shellstrom.
Hello, I'm Bob Shellstrom from Fountain Hills. I had the opportunity to look over these sheets that you're looking over to, and a number of things just really popped out when I was taking a look at it. First, of course, talking about the increasing revenues, I would assume that tax increases on property is off there, since the community did say 2 to 1. They were not in favor of that. So if there is something else, great, but I really don't see that as an issue for being able to resolve the differences in spending and our budgets. One thing that was missing here, though, was looking into ways to responsibly reduce spending in this town. For example, I've been following this wayfinding sign deal. Here's something we need a little bit of a cleaning up of some of our signs. They're looking a little rough. But we spent $95,000 just to design a new wayfinding sign system. And I understand it'll cost at least $150,000 to implement. If you're in a budget crunch for fundamentals, you don't do that, okay? Looking down here too, we talk about increasing density. Now, I think if you talk to people, and it's only anecdotal, but I talk to a lot of my neighbors about this thing, they kind of like the idea that we're not overcrowded now. When I looked for a house, I looked in Scottsdale, I looked in Gilbert, I looked in Chandler. What I loved about Fountain Hills is we're not that overcrowded. You lose that advantage and that discriminator if all of a sudden we have 10, 20, 30,000 more people crowding the roads, and it's going to increase through use the expense to the road fund, which is already having some issues. That was missing from this. I think we need to get that participation there. We also say we want families addressed. So I said, do we have a shortage of families in Fountain Hills? I took a look at the census data, which apparently wasn't considered here. And what I found out is in Fountain Hills, we have 63% of our households as families. That compares to 57% in Scottsdale, and at 62 or 66% in the U.S. overall. We have a lot of families. We have small families because our average household size is only 2.6. A lot of that's drawn down because we have a lot of single people in places. But the bottom line is I'm not seeing any data that says we're short on families. To the issue of the schools, one of the things I looked up in the census too is, do we have a shortage of kids for our schools? Census tells us back in 2000 we had 2,800 K through 12 age students in our town. Now we have 2,600 of the students, school age students in our town. We dropped a few hundred, but not a dramatic amount. At the same time, we dropped about 1,000 students in enrollment. What this is indicative of is you got a problem with quality. Today, we have approximately 1,500 students, K through 12. 1,000 of them, of kids in this district, of the 2,600, are going elsewhere. Okay, That's good. Anyway, bottom line is here, there's a lot of work to do, and I think there are things that are being omitted that we need to have voices in this process, an open company, to be able to address that apparently hasn't been done at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any comments? Yeah, it's on the agenda.
I'd like clarification from our town manager. I believe that
Vice Mayor?
in regards to the signs, that was an inaccurate
That-
statement.
We did not purchase them, we did the design, and I believe, the only thing is that we didn't complete the project, so some of that was money carried over into this fiscal year. But he's right about that was a project in the budget at one point,
But it wasn't actually allocated.
and it wasn't carried out.
Councilman Magazine?
I'd just like to say that if you look at all of the unfunded projects, particularly infrastructure projects, that this town faces, it adds up to many, many millions of dollars. We have cut and cut and cut. We've reduced our staff by a huge amount. To indicate that we should cut further is great. I'd be more than willing to listen to some additional cuts that make sense, but I think we have a serious problem. Again, if you look at all those unfunded infrastructure projects that affect this building, the library, not the library, this building, town, community center, and so on and so forth. These are things that people don't see. You don't see these as you drive down the street. These are hidden, so they don't have a constituency, but it's a real problem.
Thank you, Councilman. I just thought of one other thing, maybe before the retreat. Could we get some information about the legalities, the restrictions on the school district to what they can and can't do with their property? Because my understanding is that it's not simply a matter of choice, it's what they can and can't do. I appreciate that. Can we move on? The next item is a presentation on Golden Eagle Park. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the Council's aware, back in October, I believe it was October 2nd, we had an unprecedented thunderstorm. Quite a bit of damage was sustained at Golden Eagle Park. And we came back to you shortly after, probably about 6 weeks later, after we had started doing the cleanup, to try to get a sense of direction and also to get your authorization to impose some emergency measures so we can get the cleanup, not only the cleanup done, but also to do the restoration work. I'm going to turn it over to Community Services Director Rachel Goodwin, who's going to go over initially her component, which is the restoration of the park, and then we're going to have the Public Works Director come up and go over some of the interim improvements to the drainage so that this doesn't happen while we're trying to come up with a longer-term solution. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Goodwin.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, I am privileged to be here tonight to give you an update on where we are. As our town manager just mentioned, it wasn't too long ago that this happened. It was actually October 2nd, so that really was less than 6 months ago. And it was pretty devastating, not only from the staff perspective, but from the community perspective. Our fields were, a majority of our park was rendered unusable. So I'd like to start by offering a thank you to our staff who have made this a priority to get this park back up and running. They've done an outstanding job, and it's not without notice that it's due to their hard work that we've been able to get to where we are today. This presentation is going to be rather photo heavy. I am a believer that the photos will really tell this story tonight, but please feel free to stop me. And then once I get through the ball field updates, as I said, we're going to turn it over to Director Weldy for some further information. So without further ado, this is an overhead shot of what our park looked like following the October 2nd flooding. As you can see, the better part of 2.5 fields were inundated with mud and other types of debris, so this is a good visual. This is what our parks looked like as of January 31st, so just a couple of days ago. We've made some significant improvements. You can see there's a stark difference between our 3 fields in dark green and our field that's in a lighter shade of green. That's just simply due to the overseeding. The field 1 is dormant right now because it is a summer grass. So this is another photo of the damage that was sustained. Mud was knee deep through through parts of our park. It was pretty extensive. Here's another photo. This is a fence that was overtaken by mud and additional debris and boulders and things like that. Again, it's hard to describe. It's much easier to see when you see these types of photos. So, after council approval in November, here's what our staff has accomplished. Our first focus was on restoring the turf, as well as safety issues. So more than 200 tons of dirt and debris were removed from fields 2, 3, and 4. The majority of fences around the fields were removed and replaced. Irrigation sprinkler heads were removed, repaired, and replaced for field leveling. And valves and valve boxes were excavated because they were under quite a bit of mud, and they needed to be repaired as well. So we had to dig all of that out. Again, that was no small task. This is some photos of the excavation in progress. So as you can see, the mounds of dirt that were accumulated were just, it was hard to understand when you say it's 200 tons of debris. When you start to see the piles of dirt out there and how high they were, that really brings it home. Again, they were out there working day in and day out. Here's another photo of the infield and the backstops of what we had. It's a reminder that what our backstops look like after the flood. We knew our backstops were in mediocre shape prior to this. As we excavated, we found much more extensive damage. Thankfully, these were already in progress to be replaced this year. This just reminded us that it really needed to be done ASAP.
Just so you can explain it, because it's hard to see some of these visuals.
Oh,
But,
sure.
that's rot that we're seeing?
Yes, that is it is kind of hard to see from here. Essentially, below grade is an entire section of the pole that has deteriorated. You can stick your hand in there. There's a big gaping hole, which obviously is a safety issue if we were to have that backstop go down, potentially when there were users in the park and things like that. So what we did, all of the backstops on 3 fields have been reinforced and repaired. The foul line and home run fences were repaired and replaced as well. All 3 fields had existing turf and infield mix removed, and the field surfaces were restored to their proper depth. It's just a matter that over time, the fields had been built up with material, and that needed to be properly excavated and brought down. The fields were laser leveled and re-engineered to better distribute water and improve the drainage. Again, all of these projects were done as a mitigation effort to reduce future flooding. We knew there is a lot of standing water that was happening on our fields prior to this. We went ahead and did quite a bit of leveling to make sure that the fields drained properly in the future, so that we don't have that standing water issue in the We had over 200,000 square feet of overseeded sod was installed across the fields. That was the picture you saw at the beginning. Due to some rain that we had throughout the early January, that did slow this process down. This weekend's rain, as well as today, has slowed us down a bit too. We had 450 tons of infield and warning track mix installed over the 3 fields. We had trees removed between our ball fields. The tree removal was necessary because we do have concrete lifting in that area. We are going to be replacing that concrete, and we do not want to have that issue again. In addition, a number of the trees were damaged in monsoons, so they were a bit of a safety hazard. And a special thanks to our Public Works team who helped us remove those trees. And then our mowers and machinery that were all flooded out in our storage area were all repaired and are back in operation now. Some photos of the sod out there. Again, 200,000 square feet is a big number when you start to see it in application. Needless to say, it looks great. I hope everyone has had a chance to get by to see it over the last week or two. So there is an overhead that really shows how big of a change we've seen out there. So still to come, we do still have more work to do. The bases, the pitching rubbers, and the home plates will be replaced and reinstalled here in the next week or two. We just need to let the fields dry out a bit. Removal and replacement of the damaged and lifted concrete that I just mentioned. It's currently it's a liability. We do have it in our budget to do that. We are looking to install shade structures over our existing bleachers due to the tree loss. Nobody wants to sit out and watch a baseball game in the Arizona heat. So we would like to put in some shade structures. That will be upcoming. And then we do have some final cleanup in and around the walking areas, the dugouts, et cetera. If you haven't been out there, the dried mud is essentially like cement. It's not a quick sweep or broom effort or power washing. It is going to be a bit of an effort. So we do have some things we're continuing on, but we've made significant strides since October. So the question you probably really want to know is how much money have we spent? If you recall, we have 4 funds that are supporting this project. We have some capital improvement funds that were already allocated. That $50,000 was for the concrete replacement that we were already planning to do. The facility replacement fund had a little over $140,000. That was for the backstops that we knew needed to be replaced as well. That was already in the budget. Our operating funds, we've been able to divert about $50,000 in operating to help support this effort. But the majority of it came through council authorization of $405,000 back in November due to deferred or canceled capital improvement projects outside of the park. So things we were planning to do, but we canceled in order to have the funds to restore our park. In total, that gave us just over $646,000 for the ball field efforts. All right. From that total, this is what we've spent so far. I'm going to go through it. Please feel free to stop me if you have questions. When we first came to you, we looked at a potential budget of $646,000, as we just showed you. $76,000 of that was a contingency, the what-if factor, if we find things that we didn't plan for. Year-to-date actuals that we have spent thus far is a little over $338,000. That leaves us a little over halfway. Our expected totals for this project, we've had a lot of savings. We've had some savings due to staff efforts. We were expecting close to $15,000 in irrigation issues. That ended up being closer to $3,000, and that was due to staff efforts. They went in and manually did a lot of the work to save us that money. I mentioned we had $5,000 expected for tree removal. Our public works staff came in and did that so that we didn't incur any cost for that. So staff has really tried to extend themselves to make sure that we have the funds to do what we need to do. So our expected totals, we're not done yet. We have a number of things that aren't complete. I mentioned the concrete repair. We have shade canopies that I mentioned. We have our bases and things like that. Some of that has not yet been expended. So our expected total for the park is just over $480,000 for the park portion of the restoration, the ball fields. That leaves us a little bit over almost $161,000 that we have been able to save. So that's great news in our opinion. We have not, thankfully, we're grateful that we have not hit any issues, unexpected or otherwise. Obviously, this is not a bottom line total yet. We do still have a number of things that are unfinished. We have a number of areas that have not yet been billed and completion to us yet, so we are still moving along. But this gives you an idea of where we are financially.
Mayor and council, the other thing we really thought we were going to have to really eat the cost on was the motorized operating equipment. We were very fortunate. We avoided that bullet. We were able to get all that equipment that was underwater, all the motorized mowers and sit-down mowers, all that, the gators, those were all able to be repaired by different companies. And so while the repairs were expensive, it certainly avoided the cost of replacing them. So we were very fortunate with that as well.
Yes. So before moving on from this slide, I know I'd like to pause to see if there's any questions, anything that you'd like to know specific to the ball field efforts.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Rachel,
Absolutely.
as far as the communications with like Little League, so when do we think our user groups will start being able to use the ball fields?
Well, if Mother Nature would work with us just a little bit, we were shooting for the third weekend in February, so that's a little over 2 weeks. But due to the significant rain that we had this weekend, we are watching to make sure we've got to get out there to mow, and we need to do a few more things. We're hoping by March, the first part of March would be ideal.
When did their season open?
Their evaluations were actually this past weekend. We do still have Field 1 that is usable, so they've been able to try to use that. And we've been in contact with not only our local Little League, but a lot of our tournament users that come in during the season to host weekend events at our programs. They have all been patiently waiting and wanting updates kind of on a week-to-week basis. So we've been trying to keep everyone in the loop in a very transparent effort to make sure they know where we are and what we're doing. It looks beautiful. We're just not quite there yet. But the end is near. We're almost there.
Councilman Magazine?
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't thank the staff for an outstanding job under a lot of pressure. Not only getting things done so expeditiously, but doing it in a way that saves us money. So congratulations to you and the staff.
Absolutely. They've done a fabulous job out there.
Thank you.
And we owe a debt of gratitude to the council because you trusted us with the emergency measures that you took at the time. And we would not have been able to do this. We'd still be seeking proposals and bids and all that. So thank you to you and the trust that you invested in us.
Councilman Charno?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I stopped out there on October 3rd, and having watched that park come to fruition over the years and being on the old Parks and Rec Commission back in the early 90s kind of broke my heart at the time, and then stopped out there last week, and looks awesome. So thank you, staff. And Kevin was out there looking dapper tonight in his tie, but so it's just really, really great to see. And it brought back nightmares of me playing men's softball over at the old Four Peaks ball field, and a lot of scrapes and cuts and stuff. Almost makes me want to get back out there, but of course then now it'd be senior softball. But
We have that too.
Anyway, good job.
Thank you. I agree. Our staff, when we remember that there's only 2 staff that take care of that entire park, Kevin and his crew have been out there putting in a lot of effort out there to make it usable. When we were out there on October 3rd as well, I think we were all rather dumbfounded as to
It was crazy.
where do we start exactly.
It was
So
unbelievable.
we've made some significant strides.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Yeah, Councilman Magazine and I walked out there about a week after that happened, and it was a disaster. So you've done a great job. I was out there the other day walking. I would like you to address, though, for the council and for the public, to talk about what you've done to mitigate the risk of having another flood that would cause additional damage and additional expense. I saw quite a bit of drenching. It looked like you've done a lot of work, so if you can address that, would be great.
I'm going to turn it over to Justin.
I was just
because
gonna say,
that's Public Works.
Our Public Works Director will be able to address that a bit. We've done efforts on the ball fields to make them drain properly so that we don't have that standing water issue, but it is through Public Works efforts that we've been able to try to mitigate future flooding. So I'll let him answer that question.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Director Weldy, we're ready, I think.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you recall, when we came to you and asked you for the trust to spend these monies, we indicated that we had some proposals that we would like to implement. You've heard about the wonderful improvements that have taken place out on the field. We would like to share with you some changes that we made. As previously stated, this park area receives water from 3 primary areas. The one to the north is Ashbrook Wash. The one to the center is Bristol Wash. And the one down on the south is Cloudburst Wash. This park area and this impoundment area as a whole receives runoff from an excess of 5 square miles in the McDowells. And this is a considerable amount of water. On the particular night we had an unprecedented rainfall in a very short period of time. As a result of that rainfall, we all know the outcome. A substantial amount of organic debris and dirt and rock and other items, included but not limited to tires and timbers and furniture, all came down into the park. Since that time, we'll move to the next slide. This is some of the future proposals that we have, or we will be asking the mayor and council in the future to look at, which includes these red areas here are sediment drop basins. Those sediment drop basins are a large hole opened below the grade with a somewhat steep slope, but not very steep. The intent of these sediment drop basins is to absorb the energy and debris coming in from these three washes and slow the water down and minimize the amount of water that overtops the banks of the aforementioned washes and keep them, to the best of our ability, from entering onto the turf. I'm going to move past this one with just a brief explanation. So what we did was, while Kevin and his staff were out there working with their contractors, we enlisted 2 local contractors that have been here for a considerable amount of years. Tom Hume and his construction company, which is Karam Contracting, they provided the necessary equipment and the labor to remove the materials out of the drainage channels and from the surrounding parkway that goes around the walking paths and sidewalks. Another local contractor and/or vendor is Verde Valley Nursery. They provided all of the necessary staff and equipment to remove all of the vegetation so we could gain access to these drainage channels. And third, and this is a resident, but he does not have a business here, is Vincon Trucking, and they provided all of the trucks to remove this material. As you know, as part of our estimate, we estimated that the removal of the debris would be approximately $100,000. We are just slightly under that, but not yet complete, so we do not have a total at this time. The trucking and equipment we estimated to be at approximately $50,000. Again, we have not completed that because we still have some additional work, but we still have some funds in that balance and believe that it will be adequate, and will provide back to the mayor and council in the future the total cost. And lastly is the brush removal, and we were about halfway into that fund for all the materials that have been removed to date. And again, we still have some additional work to do in there that we will continue to keep working on. This right here is a photo, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but this is Bristol Wash. So this is the one in the center of the park. This is Golden Eagle Boulevard here, Bristol Wash. And right here, it's a little bit difficult to see, but we have already installed the first sediment drop basin as a test to determine approximately how big or the location of future sediment drop basins may be required. This photo right here is the latter part of Bristol Wash, and it shows the very, very beginning tie-in of Ashbrook Wash here. Note that this area also catches the drainage near Bristol Wash and the parking lot off of Golden Eagle Boulevard and the parking lot drain area. What you see here are the channels that we have excavated and removed the vegetation and the debris on. This channel right here, after the event, was higher than the turf on the field by 2 or 3 feet in some areas. It is now 3 to 5 feet below the turf elevation, and it has some fortified berming along this side and along this side to channelize future minimal flows. This area right here is the northern section of the dam. In this particular area, and for those of you that had an opportunity to go out and visit, you'll note that on the dam face itself, about 16 to 18 feet of material was removed. And as we come closer back up to the west here along the walking path, that comes down to just 2 or 3 feet. But overall, the excavation on the face of the dam averaged about 10 feet in depth of organic material and silt. Currently, as we move forward with the progress, we have been working with the J.E. Fuller. The reason that the town selected J.E. Fuller is they most recently completed the redelineation study for Cloudburst and Ashbrook Wash. What that means is that the majority of the drainage area that impacts this, they have already collected and compiled all of that data for the Maricopa County redelineation of that area. And that will reduce the amount of time necessary and the amount of funding necessary for J.E. Fuller to complete a drainage study for this area. We hope, and I have the study here, and or not the study, but rather the scope. Randy Harrell and I, the town engineer, are hoping to bring a contract to council, most likely in March, for approval to actually initiate this study. And the intent is, if we can get them on the study, that we would like to have a set of sealed plans ready to implement the possible changes that they recommend next fiscal year as soon as possible.
Justin, just so that they know too, that you have placed a couple placeholders in the capital improvement budget. So just anticipating that Fuller will have these recommendations so that we can hopefully implement them through next fiscal year, correct?
That is correct. In our proposed budget, we have included some funding for the possible changes to the Golden Eagle Dam impoundment area. I'm free to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Justin. Anybody have any questions? Oh, Councilman Sharno?
Justin, what's the plan going forward with those 3 wash areas in terms of the vegetation control? Is it going to be completely stripped out every year or just continual, or how's that going to work?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sharno, the intent is to, for right now, keep the vegetation removed from the drainage channel until we get the report back from J.E. Fuller. That report will include measures that are necessary, including but not limited to flood walls, armored barriers, gabion structures, and/or riprap. As part of that plan, we will also be asking them to give us a proposal for long-term landscaping, not in the drainage channel, but on the slopes and the shoulders.
Yeah, that's a good point, because anybody that's been out there recently, it looks very bare from what it looked like before, but a lot of that vegetation was part of the problem. It had to be removed. And to Justin's point, we believe that by basically lining the drainage basins and some of the what we call the man-made washes coming in, will actually not only strengthen and handle the water flows, but we'll also be able to trap some of the silt so that that doesn't flow into the fields in the future. But right now, it looks horrible from what people saw before, but we believe that over time, with the recommendations that we can implement, we'll actually make it look just as attractive as it did before, but it'll be more functional.
And then just real quick, maybe for Grady, have we had any chance to ask the flood control district if they can do anything for us, either money-wise or any other assistance, or are we on our own here for this?
I'll turn it over to Justin, but I believe that we are on our own for the most part on this, because it was originally designed to be basically what it did, which it handled all the flows from the storm that we have. I'll turn it over to Mr. Weldy.
That is correct. So the entire area affected is referred to as an impoundment area, and that is designed to hold water from doing property damage downstream in Ashbrook Wash. So the flood control district would not provide any funding or partner with us on any changes to the impoundment area. They have, however, worked with town staff on the dam and downstream from the dam on the two crossings at Bayfield and Saguaro. They provided the funding for those new bridges in there.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you so much, Justin. We really appreciate all your work, of course.
You're welcome.
And your staff. Next, we have a call to the public. Do we have any cards?
Yes, first is Maureen Earp.
Hi.
This is my first time ever doing this, so my name is Maureen Earp. I've been a resident of Fountain Hills since 2010, and I've been coming here since 1989. My 4 concerns are traffic for pedestrians. First one is intersection of Avenue of the Fountains in La Montana. There's many people doing rolling stops. It's a 4-way stop sign. People turning often stop in the middle of their turn to allow drivers to go straight. Drivers are always really confused at who really has the right of way. During events that close Avenue of the Fountains, creates a whole different set of issues, I think. 2 is intersection of Avenue of the Fountains and Verde River. Now it's a one-way or a 2-way stop. Drivers are like, well, there was just a 4-way stop, now there's a 2-way stop. Walkers who walk the Avenue of the Fountains walk down the middle. There's not a crosswalk in the middle, so do you cross over the street and go by the sidewalk? So there's another issue. 3, intersection of Avenue of the Fountains and Saguaro Boulevard. Rolling stops, another 4-way stop, people turning off and in front of other people, not sure where to go. No barrier on the sidewalk along Saguaro, so easier for cars to jump the sidewalk. 4, what I have done myself and my guests out of danger, I don't walk down Avenue of the Fountains anymore. It's very sad. I have to walk where I don't cross any intersections. If I do, I, as a pedestrian, make sure that I have my eyes on those cars and get contact with those drivers so they know I'm here. So I'm going like, hey, you know, I'm here. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have others?
Yes, Catherine Loria.
And Mayor, if I may, just for the audience's information, the Mayor and Council at its retreat on Thursday, there was an item on their agenda that talks about pedestrian safety, because this has been first and foremost on the minds of the council since we've had some of these really tragic accidents. And so they're wanting to discuss and provide direction to staff on this very important issue. So thank you for bringing this to the council's attention.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Kay Loria. I'm also going to speak to pedestrian safety and cyclist safety. One of the things I love about Fountain Hills is that many parts of it are very walkable, but it has become increasingly unnerving to walk any place in the last 2 years, especially this past year, on the Avenue of the Fountains, as Maureen Earp pointed out. I hope that you will consider some, pedestrian and cyclist safety as you think about traffic control issues, because traffic has really increased. And I think it will take you probably a long time, so I hope you consider some short-term solutions like flashing lights, yield to pedestrian signs, things like that, or yield to cyclist signs, because I think that those might be less expensive and hopefully, could improve some of the awareness of cyclists and pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? I just wanted to say about, in general, call to the public, because somebody was talking about that today on Facebook, and I know it's kind of frustrating for us to sit here and look at you while you're talking to you, but basically it's for transparency. It's so that, this is an important issue, and if we started kind of talking about it up here, there'd be others who didn't realize we were going to talk about it, so they didn't come. But like Grady said, we will be talking about it at the retreat. It's been upmost on our mind. The texting and driving, the hands-free, the information about the intersections and enforcement. We'll be talking about that, and hopefully we can get some things going. But we really appreciate you coming. Thank you. Was I good? Was that okay? I didn't stray.
Yes, Mayor. No, that's just fine.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda. Do we have a move to approve, or does anybody want anything taken off?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We'll go to our regular agenda. The first item is consideration of appointing citizens to SPAC. Grady, or anybody have a report on that? No?
Don't you have a list?
Pardon me?
Don't you have a list?
Oh, I know what I'm doing. I just wanted to know if anybody had a presentation. Do we have any speaker cards on this? Thank you. Yes, I want to thank all the applicants who were interviewed by our council subcommittee. The recommendation is to appoint for the term ending November 5th, 2020, Gerard Bishalia, John Kraft, Peter Bordeaux, and Cynthia Magazine, and to appoint Jerry Friedel as for the remainder of the term that ends June 30th, 2019. Is there any discussion on this item? Can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
I'd like to request a roll call vote.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to request a roll call.
Oh, sure, we can have a roll call vote. So we have a motion, we don't have a second yet?
I'll second.
Thanks. We have a motion and a second to approve as stated, and we ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Charno?
Aye.
Councilmember Magazine?
Recuse.
Councilmember LaCrone?
Aye.
Councilmember Spellich?
Aye.
Mayor Dickey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tolis?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Magazine, if I may, I think just so the record correctly reflects the proper term, probably abstain from the vote as opposed to recuse would be. So if we could have it be abstain.
Okay. Abstain from the vote.
Okay, so is that okay then? All right, thank you again for everybody who is interested, and thank you for those willing to continue to serve. See you Thursday. Thank you. Next, we have discussion about the items included in the League of Arizona Cities and Towns Legislative Bulletin, or any action. Is there anything that you all would like to discuss or take a position on? We all got all that information. I just wanted to mention that the League does do a call every Monday at 10 o'clock. I think it would be great if we could get you all to participate, because there's a lot of things going on that affect us. And as you know, we don't have an intergov per se that can be down there and advocate on things like the hands-free driving or infrastructure funding. I wanted to thank Councilman Charno, because he did take the initiative and write to our representatives about not deflecting any of the HERF funding this time. Short-term rentals, whether we vote for our judge to be retained, there's a lot of things out there. So please be aware of it and bring back anything that you would like us to take action on, because this important items. So I guess nobody has anything at this point that they want to take action on. We'll go to the next item, which is discussion and direction to the town manager. Does anybody have anything? Obviously, we heard from some constituents tonight. You heard those, Grady, going after the intersections, and of course, that we're well aware that's very much on our in our plan. So, anything else that you'd like? Sorry, Councilman Magazine.
This is not aimed at, it's not to Grady, but I did want to say that I went to the community center this week for the, I don't know what they called it. All I know is the children took over the community center, and it was a great success. It was absolute bedlam. Kids were hanging from the chandeliers, and I want to thank the staff and hope we can do it again.
Thank
Sounds
you.
like my house.
And more to those kind of items, the next item is the summary of the council requests and report on recent activities by the mayor, council, or town manager. I think, does anybody have anything that is similar to that? Yeah, that was awesome. Anything, Mike? I'm sorry, Councilman Charno?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just want to report on, I went to a Valley Metro Board of Directors meeting January 17th. Two of the biggest items discussed, one was they're looking for a market research firm for the next 5 years. They do a lot of surveys of their ridership and that kind of thing to see who's riding the buses and the trains and that kind of thing. And then they also executed a 30-year lease agreement with a solar company. They're going to build some new shade structures at a Mesa facility for their buses. And this 30-year solar agreement drew a lot of discussion, but everyone went along with it at the end. And it's only at the end, after 30 years, then Valley Metro can just buy the system for like $62,000. So that was kind of interesting. And it was interesting to hear it takes, if they don't have shade for the buses, takes 30 minutes in the morning to cool down a bus before they can even take it and pick up passengers. So I thought that was, so shade obviously will make a big difference on that and save a lot of gas and expenses. And then just want to remind everyone, at our last meeting, we did approve a lottery grant application. We're going to get about another $65,000 to be used for transportation related projects. And you know, we are finishing up a bus stop over here near the library. It's part of a park and ride facility that's going in, and so we're going to finish that up hopefully by the end of March, I think. And then Valley Metro is going ahead and performing a transit study update for us free of charge. And so that'll be happening in the next few months. And once that is complete, then we can analyze it and figure out what we want to do moving forward, transportation-wise, with you know, the approximately $225,000 that we have sitting in our budget already from previous grants. So that's just a little update from that perspective.
Thank you, and I promise I'll get you out of here, but I do have a few things. I went to the Golden Eagle Foundation, had a program for their mentoring. The folks there, the adults that mentor the kids, they've been doing it for 20 years, right, Dana? And so that was a pleasure to be there and see that they're continuing that program and affecting the lives of the children in our community. I went to a Greater Phoenix Economic Council quarterly mayor supervisors meeting. Strong message about modernizing, maintaining infrastructure, and HERF funding, again, just like what Mike had sent to other bills are on the same page as MAG. I went to a MAG Regional Council meeting, and I wanted to quickly mention that they were going through their closeout, which are projects that just didn't get done this year. I'm happy to say Fountain Hills got the $320,000 for the Fountain Hills Boulevard shoulder paving, which was just all the cities got it. There was like a record amount of closeout money available in Maricopa County this year, so that's really good news for us. I'm sorry, I think I should have called on you. Did you have something you wanted to talk about, Vice Mayor? No? Okay.
I went to the East Valley Partnership breakfast with the governor and tried to represent Fountain Hills amongst the massively growing East Valley communities, and it was very good. It was very good. A lot of good networking and a lot of positive things happening in the state. Maricopa County is, in Scottsdale, is one of the number one growth areas in the country right now. So we're really poised for a lot of growth. There's 200 plus people moving to Maricopa County every day.
Wow.
From many, many different regions. And this massive cold front in the Northeast. Call all your friends.
They could take a little rain, huh?
Right.
Thank you, and I'm glad to have all of us doing these various things around the region. Before we adjourn, we are having the famous retreat, so that's on Thursday, 9. It's supposed to be to 3. We'll see if we can shorten that up a bit, but it'll be at the community center. Really hope everybody can at least see for part of it. We're going to try to tape it. I don't know how good the sound will be, but that would be great. Then you can hear firsthand some of the things and talk more about the strategic plan. Again, it's more of an internal sort of thing, so we don't have a input capacity, but certainly welcome to come and listen. And then on the 26th, I will be joined by Councilman Charno and Vice Mayor Tolis. We will have a town talk at the community center at 6:30 that night. That's a Tuesday on the 26th, and it's to hear from the community. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Before we do, Mayor.
I'm sorry,
I
ma'am.
think I'd be remiss to not mention this. We had, or you had proclamated that Speak Up, Stand Up, Save a Life month was January. I did attend the conference, and I know our commander was there, a school resource officer was there, some members from one of our schools was there, and as well as the middle school principal. But there were 5,000 people, 3,500 students. There's about 150 schools involved, and it's growing leaps and bounds. And I know they're going to need a bigger place. It was at the Grand Canyon University, their arena, which was huge. I was a facilitator, so I had a group of kids that I worked with. They kind of run it, though, the kids do. So we're really teaching them to speak up, and when they see signs of danger with other children, to say something, and it has saved lives already. So it's a great program. It was a privilege to be there and to see all of the police officers, teachers, children, all in a place together trying to solve that issue. It was very good.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry I missed you before. Now, do we have a?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. I'm afraid. All in favor? Aye, thank you very much.
Good job.